Task number 6, Socat. This task is part of the what the shell module. That module is part of the upload vulnerabilities module. Is actually a prerequisite of upload vulnerabilities module, which is part of the complete beginner path on TryHackMe that we are following. All right. Socat is similar to Netcat in some ways, but fundamentally different in many others. The easiest way to think about Socat is as a connector between 2 points. In the interest of this room, this will essentially be a listening port and the keyboard. However, it could also be a listening port and a file, or indeed 2 listening ports. Also, all Socat does is provide a link between 2 points, much like the portal gun from the Portal games. Jump on Steam and check that out if you don't know. Once again, let's start with the reverse shell. And I presume here we have a little reminder of what a reverse shell is, and then a bind shell. But if you go back to our previous videos, if you go types of shells, task number 3, in the same module, you will find what a reverse shell is and what a bind shell is with examples. So a reverse shell, as mentioned previously, the syntax for Socat gets a lot harder than that of Netcat. Here's the syntax for a basic reverse shell listener in Socat, and here we see Socat, and then we use a TCP service with a -l and then port, and we see another hyphen at the end. As always with Socat, this is taking 2 points, a listening port and a standard input, and connecting them together. The resulting shell is unstable, but this will work on either Linux or Windows and is equivalent to Netcat, basically the default Netcat listening command. On Windows, we would use this command to connect back. So after we open the port, we have Socat, again TCP, local IP with a colon local port, and then exec PowerShell.exe, pipes. The pipes option is used to force PowerShell or command exe to use Unix style standard input and output. Amazing. So basically you use the terminal Linux terminal commands in PowerShell or command exe. This is the equivalent command for a Linux target. So basically here, this is for Windows, and here we see for Linux, which is exactly the same. The only difference is at exec we go for bash and then -li. For a bind shell on a Linux target, we would use the following command. Basically it's the same one from here, but we use for TCP -l and then port. On a Windows target, we would use this command for our listener. Basically Socat TCP -l port exec PowerShell instead of bash. And then pipes. We use the pipes argument to interface between the Unix and Windows way of handling input and output in a CLI environment using Unix syntax for in PowerShell or command exe. Regardless of the target, we use this command on our attacking machine to connect to the waiting listener. Socat TCP target IP port IP -. Now, let's take a look at one of the more powerful uses for Socat, a fully stable Linux TTI reverse shell. This would only work when the target is Linux, but is significantly more stable. As mentioned earlier, Socat is an incredibly versatile tool. However, the following techniques is perhaps one of its most useful applications. Here is the new listener syntax. As you can see, the first part is not different, but the second part, we use a file, and then we use the TTI, raw, echo 0. Let's break this command down into its 2 parts. As usual, we're connecting 2 points together. In this case, those points are a listening port and a file. You can see it here. This is the listening port, and this is the file. This is part 1, part 2. Specifically, we are passing in the current TTI as a file in settings, the echo, and setting the echo to be 0. This is approximately equivalent to using the Ctrl-Z, place in the background, and then we have the command trick with a netcat shell. with the added bonus of being immediately stable and hooking into a fully TTI. The first listener can be connected to with any payload. However, this special listener must be activated with a very special Socat command. This means that the target must have Socat installed. Most machines do not have Socat installed by default. However, it is possible to upload a precompiled Socat binary, which can then be executed as normal. The special command is as follows. So here is how you can create a precompiled Socat binary. This is the entire command. This is a handful, so let's break it down. The first part is easy. We're linking up with the listener running on our own machine. The second part of the command creates an interactive bash session with exec bash-li. We're also passing the arguments pti, stdir, sig, int, set, sets, id, and sane. PTI allocates a pseudo terminal on the target part of the stabilization process. std err makes sure that any error messages get shown in the shell. Often a problem with non-interactive shells. Yes. SIGINT passes any Ctrl+C commands through into the sub-processes, allowing us to kill commands inside the shell. Set as ID. So basically here we kill the command inside the shell. We don't kill the shell. Set as ID creates the process in a new session, and then sane stabilizes the terminal, attempting to normalize it. That's a lot to take in, so let's see it in action. As normal, on the left we have a listener running on our local machine, which is the attacking machine. On the right we have a simulation of a compromised target. So right to the left we have attacking machine, to the right we have vulnerable machine. Running with a non-interactive shell using the non-interactive netcat shell. We execute the special Socat command and receive a fully interactive bash shell on the Socat listener to the left. So here we have opened up the port, we connect to it, we have a non-interactive shell, and after we use that Socat command, we actually have an interactive shell. Note that the Socat shell is fully interactive, allowing us to use interactive commands such as SSH. Here we can see, and here we can see that it's an interactive shell, right? We see the errors, let's say, or the messages that the tool that we are using are giving to us. This can then be further improved by setting the STTY values as seen in the previous task, which will let us use text editors such as Vim or Nano. If at any point a Socat shell is not working correctly, it's well worth increasing the verbosity by adding -d into the command. This is very useful for experimental purposes, but is not usually necessary for general use. Answer the questions below. How would we get Socat to listen on TCP port 8080? TCP-L. Boom.